Today's episode is perfect for gym owners and the decision makers within the club. Our guest today is bringing the data from Murphy Research when it comes to millennials and what they want when getting fit. Stay tuned for another educational episode from the Fitness Business Podcast. Boot camps have been making their way back into the fitness lineup in gyms and boutiques all across the world. If you have been entertaining or exploring the idea of adding boot camp programming back into your club, I strongly recommend Bryce Henson's episode number 425, How to Start a Fitness Boot Camp. Thank you for joining me today. I am your host, Dory Nugent. According to Murphy Research, the fitness wants and needs of millennials are different. For instance, millennials take a more holistic approach to fitness, and their engagement with mental mindfulness is top of the list for them. This is the second episode in our 4-part series, Generations in the Gym. Dr. Sarah Marion has been the Director of Syndicated Research at Murphy Research since 2019, and she leads Murphy Research's syndicated offerings, including the State of Our Health Syndicated Tracker. We will hear from Dr. Marion in less than 2 minutes. First, a huge thank you to Keep Me for supporting our show. Want to sell more memberships, improve your retention, and maximize your non-dues revenue? Then take a look at Keep Me. Keep Me is a smart automation platform that's helping fitness operators increase their revenue across the entire membership lifecycle with some pretty amazing results. Keep Me customers have consistently achieved lead generation rates above 60%, increased their average length of membership by 12 months, improved their non-dues revenue by 35%, and saved 16 to 20 hours a month per team member. We absolutely love this tool, and we think you will too. To learn more, head to www.keepme.ai and book a demo today. Thank you, Keep Me, for supporting the podcast. We appreciate you. Please check out all of Keep Me's offerings at www.keepme.ai.
Get your pen ready now for Keep Me's Fit Bizpiration.
Hey, Sarah, can you give us your top 3 tips for attracting the millennials into fitness facilities?
Sure. So I think one of the tips needs to be, you've got to find ways to use their engagement with online and digital fitness solutions to your advantage. Online fitness is usually a complement to the gym. So it helps them track their workouts. You can give them guidance that integrates with common systems, but you need to figure out what your people are doing with online fitness in the gym. And I can tell you, they're tracking themselves, they're using it as guidance, and make that easier for them. That helps use online fitness to your advantage because it's easier to do the workout that they want, then sure, they'll come back to you. And maybe, a lot of clubs have their own apps now to help capture some of that engagement. But the flip side of this, that a lot of gyms pivoted to streaming their workouts online. And this is also a great solution for millennials to help keep them engaged with the gym. So stream those online workouts so that people are using your trainers and your services when they're doing their workout at home. So that's one. I think also we've got to solve this gender gap between millennial men and women and help millennial women get to the gym. Because if they really value health, they value fitness, they've got the same kind of holistic wellness goals as men, but a lot of times they have more logistical barriers to being able to do the fitness that they want. So this might be about offering childcare solutions, frankly, or workouts at specific times of day, which might depend on the kind of demographics that you have. It could be partnering with a meal service. Apparently, my daycare used to do this before the pandemic so that you can pick up dinner for your family from this meal service on the way out. And that way, you've solved the problem of cooking and you have a fresh meal. So that's just one little idea. But these are women, again, who really value health. They've become more engaged with health through the pandemic, but fitting in fitness is really a difficult logistical problem for them to solve. And kind of related to that, my third point is that I think that some of those rest and recovery and wellness amenities, classes that speak to that holistic approach to health and wellness can help bring more women into the gym too, and millennials generally speaking. So a lot of them are already participating in these types of practices. And I think positioning them as self-care, positioning the gym as self-care is kind of an effective positioning for this generation, especially women and moms. They know that self-care is important. And that's something that you can say, I need to take this time. It's for myself. I can go to the gym and then I can sit in, the hydro massage chair at the end and get a free massage. Or I can go, do a little workout and then just relax in the steam room, or I can go take a mindful yoga class, whatever it is. Or as I mentioned before, if fitness is a hard sell, these other practices are much easier and gentler to introduce to women who might not have been in a gym for a while, if ever, right? It's much easier to come in for a breathwork exercise or a gentle yoga session when it's for self-care and relaxation rather than getting buff.
Back in December, we had industry expert Ben Ludwig on the podcast, and his episode, number 329, The Power of Role Playing, was a huge success with our FBP family. Therefore, we invited him back for an encore presentation. Ben is the Chief Operating Officer of Traction Group LLC, which is an F45 training company. His episode will be entitled Managing Through the Ugly, How to Deal with the Hard Changes. And if I can go by statistics, I will bet that it will be filled with a lot of great information and you won't want to miss it. So mark your calendar, Ben Ludwig, next week, the Fitness Business Podcast. MyZone has pioneered unique wearables with talking point technology that makes the difference. Reach more members of your community and keep them engaged for longer through motivation and gamification wherever they choose to work out. In the gym, at home, or outdoors, we're stronger together. Get in the zone at myzone.org. Let's transition into this week's interview with Dr. Sarah Marion. FBP family, welcome back for another episode of the Fitness Business Podcast. Hey, we are in the midst of doing this generational series on health and wellness, and we have Dr. Sarah Marion with us today. Dr. Sarah is the director of syndicated research at Murphy Research. She's been there since 2019. I think I said last time, Sarah, you're like the it girl right now. I see you everywhere. So of course I was like, we have to get her on the Fitness Business Podcast. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come on and talk to us about millennials today.
I'm excited. Please call me Sarah. I am not the medical doctor, but I'm flattered still once again that I get to be the it girl today.
You're the it girl. All righty. Let's dive into the millennials. Now, last time I spoke with you, you confessed you are a quote unquote older millennial.
I am. I have heard them called geriatric millennials, which is the worst term I've ever heard. But I am an old millennial, yes.
All right. Well, I think that kind of is a good segue right into my first question. And that is, tell us the age range. When were the millennials born? Who are the millennials? All the good stuff about identifying the millennial generation.
Yes. So millennials are those born between 1981 and 2013. So that makes them ages 26 through 41. I think that it's important to really state those ages because a lot of people still think of millennials as like the kids these days, and they're not. They're in their 30s. The oldest are hitting middle age, which is me. So they're really not young in the way that I think a lot of people think of when they say the kids. What they really mean is Gen Z.
Let's talk about the millennials and their approach to health in a general way.
Sure. So I think one of the reasons that we talk about millennials so much is because they are a large generation. They're the kids of the baby boomers who were the largest generation that, the nation had ever seen. I remember going to school and my class was the biggest class the school had ever had. And that was just the beginning. So That's why like millennials are such an important consumer market. And in terms of health and wellness, they have this really distinctive approach. So it's kind of like the culmination of a lot of trends that their parents, again, the baby boomers started, but with a lot more action, a lot more investment, a lot more time going toward it. So we talked about, when we talked about Gen Z, we talked about how they had a really holistic approach to health and that they would combine fitness, healthy eating, and mindfulness. Millennials are more so. So very holistic approach. They're really taking all of those things together. And then their engagement with mindfulness just continues to grow and grow and grow. It's grown 10 percentage points in the last year alone. So as of this past Q2, this past second quarter, 48% of millennials, so almost half, are engaged with fitness, nutrition, and mindfulness. And I said this last time, but can't reiterate it enough. This is the highest of any generation. And these are really engaged health consumers. When people are engaged in all three, they invest a lot more time and money in their health. They invested in healthy eating. They invested in fitness. They invested in mindfulness. They take time to plan ahead. They're very intentional and consistent with their habits. They're willing to invest in performance, in quality, in things that will make them keep doing the things they want to do day after day. So really high value consumer to have. And a lot of those people are millennials. Now, because they're so big, they really have been driving a lot of the wellness trends that we've been seeing for the past, 10 years or so. And now, because they're moving into this kind of prime working age of life, they have more money and they have really more stable adult routines. And that's when we see people buying equipment, joining gyms. There's we'll talk about this more, I think, but it's a time when you start to take your health more seriously. Millennials have hit that point. They always were engaged in health, but now in your 30s, things start catching up to you. You have to be a lot more intentional about what you eat and about how you exercise. And they're really doing all those things. So the other thing I think that's important to remember about millennials and how they approach health is that, again, most of them are in their 30s, and this is a real crunch time in life. So as a life stage, you are very, very busy. You're building a career, right? You're trying to find a mate a lot of the time. You're starting a family. You're balancing young children and work. You're starting to take care of your own elderly parents sometimes. You're starting to really feel your age in a way that you didn't when you were 20. And so then the pandemic happened, right, on top of all of that. And so we see a lot of ramifications from the pandemic in how millennials are approaching health. And so when you're talking about like the parents, the working parents that all those headlines were about, those are millennials, right? It's the moms working at home with their toddlers during the pandemic. It's the parents having Zoom meetings in their bathrooms. Like that was my generation. Because Gen X has older children, much more independent. They were at home too. Don't want to things were hard there as well. But it's different to have a 15-year-old at home than it is to have a 2-year-old at home, right?
Yes, our biggest problem during the pandemic was keeping enough food in the house.
I bet it was.
That was the biggest problem on who ate the last, piece of cheese out of the refrigerator or something, that's what my problems I dealt with.
Those are some big stomachs to keep full there. But that crunch time, so 65% of millennials have children in the home. That's much higher. I think Gen X is the next highest at 41%. And so those kids, so 28% of millennials have kids under 6 in the house. And the next highest one, again, is Gen X with 6%. So again, we're talking about people who have a lot of demands on their time, but who really, really care about health. And so what we saw during the pandemic is they responded to this, kind of crisis with the Great Resignation and doubling down on health. And there's nuance in there, but overall kind of work-life balance went up in terms of how they rank their life priorities. And so did health, so did mental health. And then what we saw is year over year, more took up fitness habits. So more we're exercising, more we're dieting, more we're doing all kinds of healthy eating strategies, more researching healthy recipes, more talking to their doctors about fitness and exercise, more are doing kind of a lot more people started meat reduction diets. So across, whether that's like flexitarian, vegetarian, vegan, so many people took up mindfulness and they've kept it up, and no other generation did this in the same way. So the increases are really consistent, and they keep happening year over year over year across all of these kind of health modalities and actions for millennials. It's really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And they've downshifted their work to make room for it.
Right. So now you kind of talked about the millennials as a whole. I'd love to divide them up, and let's talk female versus males and how each sex views health, fitness, working out, the gym environment.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of nuance comes in.
Okay.
So there are differences. I think the overall approach in terms, again, of that holistic approach is very similar. Really valuing health and wellness is similar, but in general, men are more engaged than women. And so that declines a little bit once you're talking about nutrition, where they're about equal, but men are much more engaged in fitness than millennial women. And then in mindfulness too. And it's not that women aren't engaged, because they are, and in high numbers. It's just that millennial men are very health minded. And I suspect that a lot of this has to do with life stage. And I have a couple of reasons for thinking that. So again, we're talking about parents of young families, right? So motivation, energy, family demands, money, these are all bigger barriers for millennial women than they are for millennial men. And millennial women actually kind of select the highest number of barriers on average of any age group. And I think it's all about just that crunch time. It's so hard to fit in all of the things that you kind of wish you could fit in a day. So another example is like about half of fitness engaged millennial men have gym memberships, which is really high. It's the highest of any group, but only 1/3 of millennial women do. 1/3 of fitness engaged millennial women. So now that's still higher than other generations, but it's the biggest age gap also. Sorry, the biggest gender gap. You see a much smaller gap in terms of online fitness trial, which seems like it would be perfect for like the working mom at home, but it's still more men who use that too. And then we hear, so this like difference in what you want to do versus what you can do. We hear that in interviews, so qualitative research all the time. And part of it is that fitness in particular, even when you really care about it, it requires time out of your day in a way that eating and even mindfulness just don't. Eating is baked into the day, like your whole day is organized around it, right? So you can make healthy choices through the day. Mindfulness is relatively easy to do in little spurts here and there if you have, a 10-minute meditation practice. But fitness is like an hour. And if you have that hour free, if you're a mom with young kids or if you're a working parent, like there are just so many demands on that hour. You have to choose fitness over any other number of like relatively important tasks. And so sometimes you have to choose, going to the grocery store versus getting a workout. And we hear this over and over again from millennial moms in particular. And for some reason, it is not true for millennial dads.
I have to agree with you on that, Sarah, just from all the years of working in the club, when that 4 or 5 o'clock the check-in started at that time for the after work crowd, it was primarily the men coming in. I'm not saying we didn't have females, but there was definitely the men populated, because I guess it's still just that mom goes home with the kids and gets dinner prepared, and dad somehow was able to slip away for 30, 45 minutes to get a workout in.
Yeah, it was even true. So at one point during the pandemic, we ran kind of a special set of questions because we wanted to know how many people felt like they were exercising more or less. Did the pandemic affect your eating, your weight, et cetera? And women, and especially moms, kind of felt experience of the pandemic was much more negative than men's and dads. And even when we would narrow it down to like, let's look at remote workers, you guys are in the same kind of work situation at home. Still, Women would say I had less time to work out. I couldn't eat the way that I wanted. My weight suffered. And men were more likely to say the opposite. So just the kind of the crush of, I think, responsibilities, probably combined with other things, was much worse for women during the pandemic than it was for men.
Continuing our talk on the millennials, what is their approach specifically to fitness? And are there any barriers, like when we talked about the earlier generation, transportation and cost was a barrier. So hear what the barriers are for our millennials.
So I think in terms of motivations, millennials are really this kind of like optimum mix of, they still want what a lot of younger folks want, but they're starting to have some of those motivations of age creep in too. So what that means is that they're old enough that like preventing future issues. I don't want to have a heart attack like my dad. I want to live a long, active, healthy life. That is a much more important motivation to them than it is for, say, Gen Z. Not as important as it is for a boomer who are currently in the midst of like working to make sure they're having a long, active, healthy life. But you start to see the sense of mortality, like they get some experience. So there's these long-term motivations that are there. And weight management also becomes more pressing. But they're also young enough that they're still motivated by the social factors that younger folks are. So they still want to look good. They want to fit into their clothes. They might not care as much about going to the gym to see and be seen, but they're definitely going so that when they do want to go out, they feel like they can be confident. And then they really have strong mental health motivations too. So exercise is really a key stress reliever and mood booster. And here they're like slightly higher than other generations, and it helps them sleep better. So you see, again, that's kind of some of that holistic approach to health coming in. But the mood management is, again, this connection between exercise and mood and energy and mental health is really strong for this generation. And also when you talk to them, it's a really important daily motivator. It's a tangible, immediate benefit that you get right away from exercise and that you want to have again and again and again. And so it helps keep people coming back. And then in terms of like, so that's motivations, right? But in terms of what they do, like they do it all. I just love the millennials. They're so fun because they really do it all. They're young enough that they're still running, they're still playing team sports. And in fact, between 2020 and 2022, the number of millennials playing organized sports went up 10 percentage points. So more are playing sports now than pre-pandemic. I think some of this is people whose group exercise programs shut down during the pandemic, and they switched to team sports for that same structure and camaraderie. And I could see the shift quantitatively when I was doing some research around group fitness. And then anecdotally, that's what I did too. I could go play on a soccer team, but I couldn't go to my dance class anymore. So now that's what I do. I play on a soccer team. So they're also, like I said, they have the highest levels of gym memberships of any generation, but they're also the biggest online fitness users. So they're doing it all. They work out at home more often than other generations, partly because of that online fitness use, I think. 1 in 3 own large indoor cardio equipment. And similar numbers own strength training equipment, more own bikes and e-bikes. They own a lot of stuff. Again, like this is a generation that is really starting to come into its own in terms of household income. And 26% own some type of smart home gym equipment, whether that's like a smart boxing bag, all the way up to those, smart gym systems. I think a lot of it is like Pelotons and treadmills. So they're using the gym and they're working out at home and they're working out outside. And so they like toggle between all of that in a week, but also I think that they go in and out. You see them trying new things here and there. That's what we do in our household. So there'll be times when we're gym members and then, that gets boring for a little while. So then we'll switch back to doing the at-home stuff. And then, that gets boring after a while too. So then you go back to the gym. But the key factor is that they're exercising consistently this whole time. So again, really valuable consumers in that way. In terms of barriers, again, it's all about life stage. It's time, energy, and career and family demands. So they don't have the same kind of monetary and resource barriers that younger generations have, but they have more demands on their time than older folks do. So convenience is like a real need, convenience and time savings, efficiency. And of course, that's what online fitness does so well. So that at-home workout can serve if you can't get to the gym. Going to the gym might be more fun, but sometimes you just can't do it. And so it makes sense for them in a way that it doesn't for Gen Z, because it solves a real problem that millennials have that Gen Z just doesn't have yet.
When I was, again, the years of working in the club, Class Pass was something that was popular. We'd see that come through. And we used to say the same thing. It was the millennials that we felt at the time were the most non-loyal, because they had the Class Pass and they were always bebopping around to all the different facilities, because they would try kickboxing class, and then they would go here for their spin class, and then they'd go to another club for a yoga class. And we used to get frustrated because we'd be like, why can't we wrangle this generation in just to stay in one place? But they didn't. And now you add online fitness into it. And
yeah, I was guilty of that. And they like variety. They like having fun. And I think also what you're talking about, like this unbundling concept, right? You used to get all of that in one gym. They're used to that not being the case. They're used to there being the yoga studio and the kickboxing studio and the bar studio. And so that means that you have to circulate between a whole bunch of places to do all the types of workouts that you want. And even if you only wanted to go to one place, like, say my time that I have to work out is, I have a lot of time, 4 to 6 p.m. There's only so many classes that can actually happen at that time. And so if I want to do yoga and there's no yoga class, well, that means I have to go down the street and do yoga somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting to see if clubs out there, if they started organizing kickball leagues and soccer leagues within their clubs, what generation, what age or what generation would sign up for those forms of exercise?
I mean, my bet, again, would be on millennials. That's probably different depending on the sport that you're going for. But even before the pandemic, I live in Seattle. There were a lot of adult sports leagues. I remember I was playing on a soccer team back then too. And a game started up. There was a ball at like a tennis court on the other side, and it looked horrible. And it turned out it was dodgeball. It was dodgeball with these like small, hard rubber balls. They were just whipping at each other.
What are your thoughts about them with their relationship with gyms? And for the ones that don't join the gyms, why? What does the data and the research show as the reason?
So again, millennials are the most likely age group to have a gym membership, and they're really kind of in a sweet spot for gyms, because especially I think if the millennial is on the older side, compared to older folks, Gen X and boomers, they are pickier, but they want it all for a lower price. And millennials are not like that. They want kind of the same things in terms of convenient location and equipment, but they're less price conscious. They're more willing to pay. They're more willing to pay for amenities if they want them. They're more willing to pay for childcare. So it's stuff like that can kind of make the difference for them, because they have more abilities to get around and have more choice, more resources to kind of pay for what they want. They're also interested in group fitness. So they're looking for really the kind of combination of extras in addition to those main location, equipment, nice atmosphere criteria. And I think, interestingly, unlike older generations also, they don't mind exercising inside. A lot of older folks see exercise as their outside time, and that's what really drives them. That's a big motivator to exercise, whereas millennials are fine being inside, no big deal. Inside, outside, they don't care that much. And they also like a good digital experience more than other generations do. So that's not going to, I think, necessarily be the deal breaker, but that like kind of sweetens the deal if you have a good app or an easy scheduling system, something that'll help make some of that work a little bit easier. Because again, millennials are also a very tech savvy generation. They're the most likely to be working remotely. They're very used to having these seamless digital solutions. But I will say that the gym is competing with the home for millennials in a way that it's not for Gen Z. So it's all part of a mix that includes kind of at-home workouts, studios, going to the gym, outside workouts, and even organized sports now too. So because they're so active, you're only going to be able to take up so much share in kind of their fitness routine. And if you want more, you're going to have to figure out where that comes from. So maybe it is they join the organized team, the gym sponsors, right? Or maybe it's getting some of that group fitness back into the gym that maybe has moved online. Or conversely, having your class be the one that's streaming online for them. They're joining gyms. They like gyms. They're willing to pay for the gym, but the kind of basket size of what they get from the gym there's more competition for that, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And, it's funny. I heard somebody refer to the millennials as the Starbucks generation, in the sense of, if they don't mind paying that $6 for a latte, right, because that's what they want.
Right. That's what it costs to get what you want.
Right. Where there's my mom, baby boomer generation, absolutely just can't understand that you would pay $6 for what she feels is a coffee, that doesn't even understand latte versus, mocha frappuccino, whatever, but so I've heard them referred to as the Starbucks generation, just in the sense that if that's what they want, they'll pay for it. They're not as price conscious as the older generations.
Yes. And I think so I agree with that. I like that characterization. And they're also that's what things have always cost. Those things have always been present. I've always been able to choose. I have to pay for it.
So Sarah, I do have another question for you in the sense of the mental health aspect. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about with Gen Z, and then here with millennials. To me, that seems like the two generations that are most in tune to mental health. I think they've heard that word over and over and over again, a lot more than, again, my generation or the baby boomers, where it was not talked about as much. Mm-hmm. So tell me about, when it comes to a gym, are they really looking at the mental health selection, like the yoga classes and the breath classes and things like that? Is that really important to them, or not so much?
It is. And again, they're more willing to pay for those things than Gen Z, and more able to pay. I mean, millennials are the real drivers of those trends. And that started, far before the pandemic. That's who was going to breathwork workshops. That's who was going to kind of sound baths and things like that. So those kind of fitness adjacent, wellness, recovery, mindfulness, the kind of, let's call them wellness, it's a general trend. Those things are really appealing to millennials. And I think that one of the ways gyms can tap into that, especially given this gender gap that I mentioned between men and women, millennials, and who goes to the gym, is these things as self-care, as part of your mental health toolkit. Because self-care, again, is a really compelling concept that is not about fitness, but includes fitness. So the answer is yes, they love that stuff. And yeah, it's part of that strong connection between mood management, mental health, fitness. Now, in terms of why millennials don't join gyms, many of these things goes back to those barriers I mentioned before. A lot of it is lack of time, especially I think for women. And then the kind of value equation around time, around cost, around what maybe activities or kinds of facilities that you like, around all of these various activities that you do or could do. And because they do so many types of fitness activities in so many types of locations, I think when you do that kind of value equation, sometimes the gym drops out. Sometimes you think, well, I have a treadmill and I play on a team, so we're not going to pay for the gym. I can get enough exercise doing it this way. So it's competition, it's lack of time, it's those kind of life stage barriers that I mentioned before, where fitness is really competing with a lot of other things. And if you don't have time, and you don't have time to even go for a walk, you're definitely not going to pay to join a gym. So finding the time for that kind of self-care is really hard, I think, especially for millennial women. And there is the competition I mentioned. Some of that is also coming from online fitness, because online fitness, there's a group of users who don't want to go to the gym at all. They really want to work out at home. They're very intimidated by the gym. They don't want people to see them work out, but they do want to work out. So they want to do fitness. They want to get fit. So they do online fitness at home. And a lot of those women are millennial moms again.
Thank you for another great episode, Sarah. As I said before, this is our second episode of this series entitled Generations in the Gym. If you missed the first episode that focused on Gen Z, no worries. Head to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com where you can listen to the show. Sarah would love to answer any questions that you might have. Please feel free to reach out to her. Her contact information can be found on our show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button. So going forward, the show notes will be emailed directly to you. Give us 30 seconds and then I will introduce you to next week's guest.
G'day, it's JT here. And I was talking to Blair McCaney, the CEO of one of our sponsors, MX Metrics, the other day. And I gave him a hard time about his company's tagline, defeating mediocrity. By definition, that means he's excluding the majority of the market. But Blair just wouldn't budge. He only wants to work with operators who want to punch mediocrity in the face, really smash it. So I've talked to a few of his customers, like Joe Shirelli from Gainesville Health and Fitness, and yeah, it's for real. While Joe is a nice guy, he isn't satisfied with mediocrity either. He's crushing it as well. So I'm still dubious about selling only to operators who want to defeat mediocrity. But if this resonates with you, I reckon you should check them out. Go to mxmetrics.com. But remember, only if you're interested in smashing mediocrity.
Quickfire 5, sponsored by Hapana.
Let's listen to hear what industry expert Ben Ludwig has on his bucket list. Ben Ludwig, thank you for coming on our Quick Fire 5 questions. You are going to be our guest next week. So we like to have a little fun, get to know you. We've got 4 fun questions. And then our last question, you get a chance to invite everybody onto the podcast for your episode. So Ben, thank you so much for joining us today.
So excited to be here, Dory.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. What is one item on your bucket list?
Dory, I want to sing the national anthem at a pro sports event. I've done it at a regional level, not at the pro level. That's on my bucket list.
Okay, so I take it you can sing then.
I can sing, absolutely.
All right, well, listen, please, if you get to sing the national anthem at an NFL game, you need to let us know so we can have a place for you, okay?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Question number 2, whose business brain would you like to pick?
Business brain, I have to choose Dave Ramsey. Dory, I've been through his program, I've read his books, and his elevator speech is that he wants people to be able to give more than they've ever given by managing their wealth properly. And I just believe if all of us committed to giving our wealth to those that are underprivileged, we could make this world such a much better place.
So tell our listeners a little bit, like, who's Dave Ramsey?
Yeah. So Dave Ramsey is the founder of the 7 Baby Steps. The Total Money Makeover is his book. He is famous for being how to manage your money biblically for those that listen that maybe have faith. So that's really one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of his. Is he's, of course, a Christian, but also, great at managing money and teaching others how to do so.
Oh, awesome. We have not had Dave Ramsey before, so that's an excellent answer. All right, let's talk about your website. What is the most visited page?
Oh gosh, this is going to sound like a plug, Dory, but the most visited page on my website is my previous show here on the Fitness Business Podcast. Actually, I get questions about it all the time. People direct message me and, hey, can you help me out with role play? It's just such a hard topic. So if you're wanting to check out my episode, it's episode 329, which is the previous time that I was on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Well, you just did my job for me. I was going to give it a plug. Yes.
You don't even have to.
No, he is correct. You can see it on fitnessbusinesspodcast.com or your webpage, right?
Yep. Check out my LinkedIn site. It's on my featured page.
Perfect. And it is show number 329, titled The Power and Place of Role Play. And I talk about it, I don't want to say a lot, but I've definitely mentioned it a few times in some of our other episodes. So fantastic. All right. Please recommend a book for all of our FBP family out there listening.
Totally. I'm huge on leadership, Dory. And also as a man of faith, I'm a fan of books that really speak to how to be able to lead well. And one of my favorite books is Winning the War Within Your Mind by Craig Groeschel. It's such an amazing book that really speaks to how much of leadership happens between your ears. So if you're looking for another leadership book and you haven't checked it out, be sure to check out that book. It's phenomenal.
Great. And we will have a link to that book on our show notes, and it takes everybody right to Amazon Books so they can just click and buy and either listen to it, or they can, obviously get the old fashioned book in hand if you still like to do that. All right, here we go. What would be one moment of next week's episode?
Great. Here's the thing, Dory. If you're listening to this right now and you're in a position to where you're thinking back and you're going, man, I've been stuck in my business before and just didn't know what to do, or I've been caught in ugly situations and really had no clue how I should move forward. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about how to be able to not only plan for these ugly situations, but how to be able to navigate through them and get out on the other side, really being able to be a better person and have your staff grow along with you.
Next week's episode is Managing Through the Ugly, How to Deal with the Hard Changes with Ben Ludwig. Ben is such a cool guy, so I think next week's episode will reflect that. Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player, or even better yet, let us do the work for you and we'll send you the show. Subscribe to the show at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Well, how about a few thank yous before we end this show? First, I'd like to thank our founding partner, Active Management, our awesome partners, Keep Me, MyZone, ISSA, and Hapana. And our advertisers, they're pretty cool too. Rex Roundtables, MX Metrics, and Vaporfresh. We believe what you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but woven into the lives of others.